We know that being a geek isn't just a hobby, it's a lifestyle. Join us as we invite special guests to share their love for the characters and worlds that shaped them. Are you ready? It's time to let your geek side show.
Join us as we talk to William Stout, the renowned fantasy and film artist known for his work on Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jurassic Park, Men in Black, Pan's Labyrinth, and more. Learn about his artistic process, his inspirations, and how he brings fantastical worlds to life in this exciting interview. Hey everyone, and welcome to Look Who Showed Up. And this time it's literally to stay dry out of the rain. It's raining in Southern California, but we have William Stout here. Hi.
Hi, Susan. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
This has been a great day so far.
I know. It's been so awesome. I feel like it's just story time.
And it's a whole building full of kindred spirits. It's people who love all the same stuff that I love.
I know.
Monsters and creatures and superheroes and all that cool stuff.
It was so awesome. We were just sitting in a room like you were filming, and we were just geeking out about all the movies that we all love. Yeah. So that was awesome. I have like a great watch list to go home to as well.
Cool.
So now that you're here at Sideshow, we talked a little bit about the book that you're releasing, The Art of William Stout. So let's start with that.
Sure. Let me tell you about the book. It's called Fantastic Worlds, The Art of William Stout, and it's huge. It makes an incredible doorstop. It's
a very heavy book.
Very heavy book. Over 300 pages, over 500 images. And one of the things that really amazed me about the book is how close and true to the color of the originals they got this. I mean, I know what the color should look like because I did the pieces, but how did Inside Editions know? They just totally nailed it on this book.
You turn a page and it just pops at you sometimes.
It does. It's incredible. There's 4 fold-out pages, and it just did a magnificent job. One of the things that really surprised me, this is getting a little technical, but there's something called spot varnishing. And they use that all through the book. It's an incredibly expensive process, and that if you look at every single image in the book, there's a shine to it because it is each of those images has been carefully varnished.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
Lovely book.
Now, just a little bit of an intro to you because I got so excited to talk to you about stuff that I forgot. So William Stout is an artist with work ranging from storyboards and production design to exhibition and even album covers. You've been shown in the Smithsonian, various museums of natural history all over the world. In fact, you've had touring exhibitions that have gone all over the world, but you've been featured in the British Museum, and even with all that, you have several specialties, but one of them is paleontological art.
That's one of my great loves. I think that all started back in 1952. I was a little 3-year-old. We didn't have a TV back then, but my mom and dad were both big movie nuts, and they took me to see the re-release of the original 1933 King Kong. And man, I think it did damage at a genetic level because I've been nuts about dinosaurs and that movie ever since. It's still my favorite movie of all time. I've seen it probably over 100 times.
It's been redone several times, and there's still something about that original that just...
It's got everything.
It has everything. It's perfect.
So
I love
cool.
it.
And then not too long after that, in the mid-1950s, I became what is now known as a monster kid.
Oh.
Monster kids are the kids who grew up in the 1950s with the Shock Theater package. That was a syndicated package of films. It was the very first time the Universal horror movies got shown on television. And they went out as a syndicated package to all the different cities in the United States. And that's where I first got to see Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, all those films. And at the same time, had a subscription to Famous Monsters of Filmline magazine. So I was finding out who was in those movies, how they were made, and all kinds of interesting details. And
do you have a favorite of those original ones?
Well, I'm really crazy about The Mummy, both the Mummy and the first sequel, The Mummy's Hand. I can watch those movies over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And the first Frankenstein film, I find something wonderful about each of those.
Oh,
films.
Absolutely. When they put them out on Blu-ray like a couple of years ago,
I was right
got
there.
all of them.
Oh, you bet.
They're so just perfect, exactly the way they are, and to see them all again was just so.
Yeah, and the writers back then, too, were all great storytellers. Even on low-budget films, you knew you were going to get a decent script.
Oh,
the stories
absolutely.
were terrific.
And the characters were so compelling and human, even though they were monsters. there was an element to each of them that you could connect with on just like a very emotional level. You understood their pain or why they were the way they are.
Oh, especially Karloff's Frankenstein monster. Because so many people have played the Frankenstein monster, but it's Karloff that touches our hearts.
Absolutely.
Such an empathetic performance, and you just feel so much for that creature.
Oh, yes, I completely agree with you. Yeah. Wow. So from being a monster kid, was dinosaurs just a natural progression?
Yes, dinosaurs. So I was drawing dinosaurs. Not too long after seeing King Kong, I saw the Rite of Spring sequence in Fantasia with all those dinosaurs. What I didn't realize at the time is that all those dinosaur designs came from one guy. It was Charles R. Knight. Really? He painted the murals for the American Museum of Natural History in New York. He painted the murals for the Field Museum in Chicago, and he painted our La Brea Tar Pit mural here for the Natural History Museum of LA County.
Wow.
And those are his dinosaurs that they used to make those movies. And if you pick up almost any dinosaur book between about 1910 to about 1960, it's probably got Charles Knight's paintings in it. He was the guy who visually defined dinosaurs for the rest of the world.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
He's a big hero of mine. I became friends with his family in the 1970s, and I knew his daughter and granddaughter and great-granddaughter.
That's amazing.
We're still in touch. And so around the mid-'70s, I was part of a very loose group called the Dinosaur Society of Los Angeles. It was organized by Sylvia Cherkis, and it was just people who really loved dinosaurs and were passionate about it. And we'd get together about every 2 months, and our guest speaker would be whatever paleontologist happened to be visiting Los Angeles that week.
Oh.
And I remember one night our visiting guest was Ray Harryhausen. And so Don Glut brought these amazing silent films by Georges Méliès, which were done, around 1900. Really ancient stuff. And I had Ray Harryhausen and Jim Danforth sitting behind me, and we're watching these incredible movies, and I'm hearing both of these guys who at that time were probably had more knowledge of special effects than any two people on the planet. And they're watching these films made in 1900, and they're going, how do you do that? Oh, my God, look at that. How do you do that?
That's so cool.
Blew my mind.
Oh, my gosh.
It was great. So Don had written a book called The Dinosaur Dictionary, and he wanted to revise it because so many new dinosaurs had been found since the first publication of that book. So one of his goals was to have at least one image per listing in the book, and he asked me to do 4, and I ended up doing 44. And while I was doing it, I thought, well, wait a minute. This may be the only picture the public ever sees of this creature, so it better be accurate. So I joined the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology and began consorting with the paleontologists and getting advice and input from them, because I wanted the dinosaurs to be as accurate as possible. Then I thought, well, the settings have to be accurate too, so I started studying paleobotany, prehistoric plants. And my regular publisher was visiting after the Dinosaur Dictionary had come out, and I thought he was being conversational when he asked, Bill, if you could do your own book on anything, what would you do? And I couldn't come up with anything, and he saw all these pictures from the Dinosaur Dictionary laying around my studio. He said, well, would you like to do one on dinosaurs? I said, oh, sure, that'd be fun, and forgot about it. 2 months later, I get a phone call from Byron, and he says, hey, Bill, we got our book deal. Bantam wants to do your dinosaur book. Suddenly I had this colossal project dropped in my lap. 80 color paintings, 50 black and white illustrations, and wow. That's when I became the dinosaur man. And fortunately, there were a number of fortuitous things happening at the time. For one, this was going to be the very first dinosaur book to bring together all the new knowledge that was being discovered about dinosaurs, that they weren't slow, they weren't stupid, they were fast, they took care of their young. Some of them even had feathers.
Yeah, you told me about the tail whip that could crack.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a recent discovery. I get notified of a new dinosaur species being found every week. It is happening
awesome.
that often now.
Wow.
And so we're living in a golden age of paleontology, and paleontology and the study of dinosaurs is anything but a dead science. It's a living, vibrant science. We're finding out that not only did dinosaurs have feathers, I never thought in my lifetime I would know the color of dinosaurs, but they're able to analyze microscopically the feather imprints and determine by the structures what color the feathers were.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm a total beneficiary of that knowledge. Plus, when I first started studying paleobotany, it was difficult because plants preserve very infrequently, and you just don't find a lot of prehistoric plants. But the paleobotanist started to study the pollen. Now, pollen is small, hard, and compact, so it preserves very well.
Wow.
So suddenly, there were whole forests springing up where previous year there had been no knowledge of plants whatsoever.
Oh, my gosh.
So I was able to use that knowledge in doing my dinosaur book. So the book came out. It's called The Dinosaurs, A Fantastic New View of a Lost Era. It was a bestseller. It put me on the map as the dinosaur man, and I've been going to the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology meetings ever since to stay updated on my dinosaur info, and the new stuff that's being discovered is just amazing. What I was telling you about earlier is they discovered that the tails of the sauropods, creatures like Diplodocus and Brontosaurus and Apatosaurus, were unbelievably effective as whips. With minimal effort, they could use their tails to really do a supersonic whip crack to any creature that might be bothering them. So I was imagining being in a herd of sauropods and hearing all these pops all over the herd from as
not
the
like
whips
that.
cracked.
That's more like bubbles, but but definitely like all the like crack, 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 like the little sound barrier pops that oh my gosh, it's crazy.
So as a result of that, I got to eventually become a muralist, and my first two murals were actually Life Before the Dinosaurs. Those were for the Houston Museum of Natural Science. And then I did 3 Cretaceous murals for Walt Disney's Animal Kingdom for their Dinoland portion of that park.
That's so cool.
And then I did 12 murals for the San Diego Natural History Museum that run from the Cretaceous to almost to the present, and 2 murals for the San Diego Zoo for their new Elephant Odyssey compound.
Wow. Just talking about dinosaurs, that's just like so cool. But you've had so much more to your career and your life than just dinosaurs. You've worked on so many different films. Some of them are our favorites. And
I worked on about 45 feature films, starting with I did the 2 Conan films, Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer. I did Red Sonja, did First Blood, the first Rambo movie. Men in Black, Pan's Labyrinth, The Prestige.
Oh, The Prestige.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that was an interesting job.
That's awesome.
Let me tell you about that. It's a Chris Nolan film, and I did a series of posters for The Prestige. Now, these weren't posters to advertise the film. These were posters that were used within the film.
For the magicians?
They're
the
faux
illusionists. Sorry.
Faux 1900 magic posters
that
feature Hugh Jackman or Christian Bale. And Christopher Nolan told me, he says, look, I want these posters to reflect their descent into insanity. So when they start out, they're sort of light and cheery with little imps and things, and by the end, they're very, very dark.
Oh my gosh, I own that movie. And the next time I watch it, I'm totally going to pay attention to all the different posters.
Yeah, originally there was a scene where one of the magicians is at the printers, and they're pulling the poster off the litho stone and holding it up for him to see. I wish they still had that in there, or I wish they'd put it in the extras. I'd love to see that scene.
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. Wow. Okay, I'm going to have to pay attention to that. See, all these Easter eggs I'm finding out about.
Predator. Worked on Predator.
Predator.
Yep.
Wow. What did you do?
And the Hitcher. Predator, I did the initial designs for the creature. And then it got enhanced by both Robert Short and by Stan Winston's team.
How does that feel, though, to have something like The Predator, which, they're still making movies to this day of The Predator, and it still looks like does it look still anything like your designs?
It looks like a combination of our 3 designs. I did the initial design. Robert Short's, he added the high-tech dreadlocks, and then Stan Winston's people added the great 4-pronged mouth.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh, my gosh. Wow. I feel like I have so many questions, but you've also mentioned working alongside, like how you wound up doing Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right. So I was working on Conan the Barbarian with Ron Cobb was my production designer. And our director was John Milius. He was the writer-director for Conan. Well, John was also at the same time producing 1941 for Steven Spielberg. Mm-hmm. So Steven's office was across the hall from my office. And Ron Cobb and I would work on Conan during the day, 6 o'clock, put our pencils down, then run over to Steven's office and kick around ideas for Steven's next project, which was Raiders of the Lost Ark.
So amazing. You told me a story, and I really want it repeated because it was so good, about the first time you saw Star Wars and what a phenomenon that was.
So I was living in Hollywood, and here was Star Wars playing at the Grauman's Chinese Theater, the biggest theater in Hollywood. And every time I drive by, I would just like, I can't believe the lines for this Star Wars movie. Holy cow. And instead of falling off or declining, they seem to get bigger each day. It's like, I thought, I've got to see what this film is, but my schedule was really busy. I finally got a break in my schedule. I thought, okay, I'm going to go see that damn Star Wars film, see what this is all about. So I parked the car, and then I'm walking up the line because I'm looking for someone to get cuts with because the line was like 2 blocks long. And I see my friend George and his little son, and they called to me. They said, Bill, come in. They gave me cuts in line. And George's little son was dressed just like Luke Skywalker. And George found out that I hadn't seen Star Wars yet, and he was just amazed. I go, well, George, it's only been out 2 weeks. How many times have you seen it? He said, we've seen it 4 times already. I said, are you kidding me? What is it about this movie? George said, look, you got to promise me you'll sit with us because I want to see your face after the first scene. I go, what are you talking about? I didn't understand it all. And then, of course, I sit down and that first ship comes over and you're going, wow, that is impressive. But then when the second one comes over, it's like, holy cow, okay, all bets are off. Yep. I am in for the whole ride on this one. This is fantastic. And that little kid who was dressed like Luke Skywalker, that was Leonardo DiCaprio.
That's amazing. I love
I've been friends with George for quite some time.
That's so cool. So Leo DiCaprio has been a Star Wars fan since a wee age, just like all of us, I mean, to be honest. That's awesome. Now, from production designs and working on films, you decided to take films and then make real-life adventures as well. So what are some of the crazy places that you've been? And
well, the first place I went to, the reason this came about is I used to be a gigantic film nut. I'd see everything. I'd go to film festivals. I'd go to marathons. I'd go to, one of my favorite theaters was the Grindhouse, known as the World Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, 3 movies for 99 cents.
Oh, awesome.
I went there one time to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What a perfect place to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
What?
And I'm sitting there waiting for the movie, and I hear a commotion in the back. And I turn around, and here come 6 guys in tuxedos to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre escorting Zsa Zsa Gabor.
What? To see Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
To see Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
She was a horror buff? That's crazy.
Guess. Or someone gave her a tip. You got to see this movie. I don't know. But,
well, that movie scared me, the bejesus out of me when I was younger. I was like, because I, honest to God, thought it was real. Like
it
when
looked
I saw
real.
it the
because
first time.
It was 16 blown up. It looked like someone's home movie that they'd shot.
I totally thought it was something that really happened to someone, and it kind of was, but oh my gosh.
And I wasn't going to see it at first because I thought it was a slasher movie, but then I read an interview with Bernie Wrightson, the guy who created Swamp Thing, and Bernie said that movie was so scary it made him pee his pants. And I go, well, I got to see that film.
And then made Bernie Wrightson. Oh my gosh. Wow. That's amazing. So what are some of your favorite movies it's really difficult. I'm sure that's the worst question ever to ask
favorite
you.
movies? Oh, that's an easy one.
Oh, really?
Because I made a list one day.
Oh, yay. I was like, oh, man, I'm asking like one of the biggest film fans.
Oh, no. Let's see. Number 1's King Kong. The rest are not in order in any way. But Shawshank Redemption, Fantasia, Wizard of Oz, Fellini's Satyricon, It's a Wonderful Life, Sullivan's Travels, Morgan, A Suitable Case for Treatment, Blow Up.
I was doing well up until you got to Morgan's A Suitable. I was like, okay.
You know what that is?
No, I don't. What is that movie?
Oh, it's a film starring David Warner. It was one of his very first movies. It was Vanessa Redgrave's first film.
Really? I love her.
Young and gorgeous. And he's married to her, but they've split up. She's getting a divorce from him. And he's an artist. He's a communist artist who is obsessed with gorillas.
Okay.
And he sees himself as King Kong.
Wow, I wonder why you like that movie.
Yeah, and he sees other people as African animals.
Oh my gosh.
He'll look at a girl who looks like a model with a long neck. He sees her as a giraffe.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to look this movie up. That sounds amazing.
Wacky film. I love that.
Wow, I'm going to have to find it somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm sure
cool.
It's somewhere.
Oh, so there I was walking up the street in Hollywood, and a friend spots me from his car, and he says, "Bill, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, man, I'm real excited. I'm going to go see this new movie." Mm-hmm. And he looked at me like I was some kind of schmuck, and he said, "Really? A movie? Man, 2 hours alone in the dark. You could be having your own adventures instead of watching somebody else's." And, man, that flipped a switch in me. And I've started scheduling adventures around the world ever since. Yeah. And first place I went to was the Galapagos Islands and Machu Picchu in Peru. And then I've been to Antarctica numerous times.
Yes.
And, Prague, Czechoslovakia, St. Petersburg, Russia.
Now, you mentioned to me a story about taking a 5-hour bus ride.
Oh, yeah. I was in Prague with my family, and one of my favorite artists in the entire world is Alphonse Mucha, the master of Art Nouveau. And his most magnificent works are the 24 paintings he did depicting the struggle and history of the Slavic people. They're called the Slav epic murals. And I found out that they were all on display in one place. It was a tiny little village that was a 5-hour bus trip out of Prague. And so even though I didn't speak Czech, there were a lot of helpful college students helping me out to get on the right buses and stuff. And I made it down to this little village, and I got to actually see all 24 of these unbelievable paintings. And I got to get as close as I wanted to them. And they had little handouts to explain in English just what each one was about. And I was literally pinching myself while I was looking at the paintings because I thought, this has to be a dream. This has to be a fantasy. I can't actually be in front of these actual paintings. But there I was, and it was all real. And to this day, it was one of the best trips of my life.
Man, you've told me this story twice now, and I'm like tearing up both times because it's just, I mean, what a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I honeymooned in East Africa.
Oh, my God.
And we went to Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and the Seychelles Islands. Wow. And before that, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, which is the tallest mountain on the African continent. Mm-hmm. That was astounding. It's you start out in sugarcane and banana plantations, and then as you rise in elevation, you're in jungles and rainforests. And the terrain changes so dramatically that you can almost see a line between the different zones.
Oh, wow.
It's really unbelievable. And due to a screw-up on my travel agent's part, I had a choice of either climbing the mountain in 3 days or not doing it at all. You're supposed to take 2 weeks. And so I thought, well, I guess this is probably the only chance I'm going to get. I'm going to go for it. Mm-hmm. So all the other hikers up the mountain had a pool going as to when I was going to drop. Probably
friendly.
Probably from altitude sickness.
Oh, yeah, because that is a lot to do.
It's a lot to rise really quickly.
Yeah, really quickly. Mm-hmm.
But I did it, and the weird thing was I got back to the little village of Arusha, which is where you start out, and I walked into a bar, and these 3 African gentlemen in suits turned to me and said, "We understand you are the person who climbed Kilimanjaro in a record 3 days. Congratulations. That is something to be very proud of." Wow. Now, my wife didn't even know yet. How in the heck did they find out?
Yeah. Just a word about the village or the city?
Jungle drums?
Jungles?
I don't know.
Who was with you who would have passed the story along? That's crazy.
Very bizarre.
Wow. Do you have a favorite place that life has taken you?
Without a doubt, Antarctica.
Yeah.
And the place I want to go the most is Madagascar because it's disappearing so quickly.
I heard about that. Yeah.
But Antarctica, there's no more spectacular place on Earth. I've never seen anything like that.
Can you describe for us a little bit of the colors from there? Because everyone just assumes that you're
it's
looking
all
at
white.
white.
Yeah, and it was not that at all. My first trip down there was very comfortable. I was on a cruise ship with the American Museum of Natural History, and so you're eating really nice food, and it's very comfortable. And it was midnight. I was on the deck of the ship. It was still light enough for me to do my pastel landscapes. And the sky went from a lime green down to an apricot orange. The sea was mint green with blue-violet icebergs in the distance. And just to the left of the ship, there was a big iceberg with a lemon yellow light emanating from below the surface of the water. And I'm like, you can't explain stuff like that.
That sounds like a fantasy realm.
It is.
Like where fairies live.
Yeah, and I saw
like where dragons come
pink
from.
icebergs, jade green icebergs, intense turquoise blue icebergs. I saw icebergs that were marbled. And when later I got a grant from the National Science Foundation to live down there, I spent 2 months based at Palmer Station and 2 months based at McMurdo Station.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was at Palmer Station, I'd go out in a Zodiac boat into what I called the Valley of the Gods. It was icebergs the size of skyscrapers. And I was taking my boat and weaving in through these colossal things. To me, they look like Henry Moore sculptures. They're just unbelievable.
Whenever you describe it to me, it just sounds like another realm that we've yet to walk into or explore.
Yeah.
So, wow.
So the National Science Foundation, I found out that they have a program. It's a grant program called the Antarctic Writers and Artists Program. Mm-hmm. And every year they pick 1 or 2 writers, artists, or photographers to go down to Antarctica. And you pretty much have carte blanche to do whatever you want down there, as long as when you return, you produce something that gives the American public more knowledge about Antarctica.
Yeah.
So I applied for that grant and got that grant. And one of the things I wanted to do down there is I wanted to scuba dive underneath the ice. So I said, what do I have to do to qualify to scuba dive under the ice? And they said, well, you have to get open water certification, advanced open water certification, medic first aid certification, rescue diver certification, dry suit diver certification, and ice diver certification.
Just that.
Just that. So I finished.
It's a very short list of very easy things to do.
They gave me that list a year in advance, and I finished just 2 weeks before leaving.
Oh, wow.
And I'm so happy I did that, because scuba diving in Antarctica is the best scuba diving in the entire world. On a great day in the Barrier Reef or in the Bahamas, your visibility is 120 feet. The visibility in Antarctica is 1,200 feet. It's clearer than the air that covers Los Angeles. And so you feel like you're flying through thick air. It's just unbelievable.
That's amazing. Wow. Wow. So Antarctica, Kilimanjaro, every place in the world imaginable.
Yeah, Patagonia is one of my favorite places.
You mentioned that as
well.
The
southern tip of South America, both the Argentinian side and the Chilean side. I got to see some of that on my first trip to Antarctica, and it just blew me away. I knew when I came back to Antarctica, I wanted to go back and really document heavily the national parks in that southern continent. Mm-hmm. It's just incredible. But they have, for one of the main things I wanted to see was the Araucaria forest. Araucarias are known here by some people as monkey puzzle trees. Mm-hmm. Those are trees that existed during the Jurassic and Cretaceous, and I wanted to see how in the wild, how did they space themselves, what kind of underbrush there was. I had a lot of questions to be answered about my portrayals of those trees. And one of the interesting things that happened was our tour guide on my first trip down there found out that I was an artist. Well, they have a deep, deep treasure of artists in South America.
Yeah.
And he would call me away from lunch, and he'd say, look, I want to show you my favorite place. And he'd take me into the jungle on a trail all by ourselves. And at one point, we crossed over into Argentina from Chile with his armed guards, and they went to stop us, and he said, he's an artist. And they all went, oh, and they just like, well, welcome to our country. And
that's all it takes.
That's all it takes. and I remember I was on a plane down to South America, and I'm sitting next to this incredibly well-dressed gentleman, and we began talking, and we sort of hit it off. And at one point, he asked me what I did. I told him I was an artist, and I said, what do you do? And he got this sad, sort of forlorn look on his face, and he sort of hung his head, and he said, "I'm only a banker."
Oh my God.
I thought, I think I'm going to like this continent.
Yeah. Wow. I'm
Yeah.
only a banker. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Wow. So
On American flights, they get up and move.
yeah, they're like, oh, you're an artist.
Let me out of here. Anybody got a seat?
So beyond, trips to South America and everything, all over the world, you have also written stories that take you into outer space and made movies that have Martians in them, and even had to consult. I'm trying to lead you into a very specific story.
So I had the good fortune of working on 2 films for Canon Films. That was sort of a wildcat film company at the time. When they were at their peak, I think the most films in production of any of the major studios was Warner Brothers with 6. Mm-hmm. And I believe Canon had 64 films in production.
Gosh, that's so fun. That's
it was
awesome.
just extraordinary. Well, one of the ones I worked on was a remake of Invaders from Mars. Now, the first Invaders from Mars is one of my favorite science fiction films. It was directed by a big hero of mine, William Cameron Menzies, the very first person in the film business to acquire the title of production designer.
Oh.
That was because he directed a third of Gone with the Wind. And Victor Fleming did not want to share director's credit. So David Selznick had to come up with something to appease Menzies, and he said, this production, it'll say production designed by William Cameron Menzies. And that was the first time that term was used.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So he had directed the original Invaders from Mars, which I consider a textbook in low-budget filmmaking. It's just fantastic. Our script was written by Dan O'Bannon, and he was the guy who wrote Alien. Mm-hmm. And it starred Karen Black, and my friend Jimmy Karen played the general. And we were working on this film, and we had approached the United States Air Force about helping us out with the movie because we needed a lot of military gear. We needed trucks and all kinds of different vehicles. Mm-hmm. And so we hadn't heard back from them. I was starting to get nervous because the shooting date was looming. So I called the Air Force up, and I said, so are you going to start helping us out with the gear and equipment stuff and making our film? And the guy in the Air Force said, I'm sorry, but the United States Air Force cannot cooperate in the making of your motion picture. I said, why? You guys are the heroes. You're the good guys. You kill the Martians. You save the day. You save everybody. You save America. What's the downside? And he said, the official position of the United States Air Force is that there are no Martians and there are no UFOs. I went, oh,
like,
seriously?
So this is who I'm dealing with.
That's the reason? I couldn't believe it. I was just, but the guy wouldn't budge.
Yeah.
And so Keith Crowsley, our storyboard artist, he's an ex-Marine. He gave me a card. He said, call this guy. And it had the guy's name on it. And it said, United States Marine Corps Public Relations Liaison Officer. So I called the number, and the guy picked up. And I explained we needed military gear and stuff. He says, well, send me the script. I said, I will messenger you the script. You'll have it within an hour or two. And so I did. This time I didn't wait. The very next day I called up and I said, are the Marines going to help us out with the making of this picture? And he said, you will have the full cooperation of the United States Marine Corps in the making of your film. I said, that's great. So there's no problem with the United States Marine Corps policy about Martians or UFOs. He said, son, it is the official policy of the United States Marine Corps that the United States Marines have no qualms whatsoever about killing Martians.
That's like the best punchline to any story ever. It's so great. Oh my gosh. We can kind of wrap this up now. Do you have any more stories you just want to share? I just love story time with you. Man. It's my favorite.
Okay, I got about 100 more stories.
Oh yeah. All right. Let's just settle in, everyone. Yep. All right. Well, Your new book, Fantastic Worlds, is published by Insight Editions, The Art of William Stout. And they can pick it up at side.show/Art of Will Stout. Thank you for everything and for hanging out all day and being so inspirational. It's been such a treat. So,
thanks.
Yeah, thank you all for listening.
Do you enjoy Look Who Showed Up? We are proud to bring you pop culture content completely ad-free, but that doesn't mean we don't need your support to help keep us going. Please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform and help spread the word about our podcast. We welcome fan feedback. Email us at podcast@sideshow.com with your thoughts and suggestions for how we can make our shows even better. Plus, tune in for our other pop culture podcasts. See your favorite common film characters evolve across 2 generations in the bi-weekly Then and Now podcast. Find out if your fan favorites make the cut in the Geek Culture Countdown, a bi-weekly podcast featuring pop culture top 10 lists. Then get all the latest pop culture news with our daily briefing, a 2-minute breakdown of the biggest geek headlines perfect for your Alexa or Google News briefings. We wouldn't exist without your continued support. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to let your geek side show.